Silence, you village idiot.
Silence, you village idiot. Hey, you guys, it's John here, Crypto Compassion. Welcome to the Texting Tailgate. I'll be hosting you guys tonight. Got a special guest, Mr. PulseRayVision. We're going to have him on. We're going to be talking about the Forge, bringing adoption of Pulsechain, all that kind of good stuff. I know he's been kind of deep in the weeds on that stuff. Also got a couple special guests here that just kind of showed up, and we're going to have them on. We're going to have a little roundtable discussion. Just shoot from the hip, have some fun. I'm going to bring Hexray on right now. Here we go. Woo! What is up?
Dude, that intro had me like sweating. Like you know that scene on Step Brothers where he like comes in all sweaty from playing the dude's drums. I thought you were gonna be like, why are you sweating? I was like, I just finished watching Cops.
I just finished watching that intro was thanks to Hexy Quinn right there. We just put her up on lights. She put that together for our new intro. We appreciate it. It's all fire. It's good. But yeah, man, you've been busy today, huh?
Yeah, we had I had a couple of meetings that I have every Sunday, and then we streamed earlier with Fashion Coder, Ali Kane, Giftware, Crypto Kool-Aid. We talked for 2 hours about Pulsar and about Pulse Wars, two exciting projects. Both come into Pulsechain, and then Pulsar is kind of crazy because it straddles the two ecosystems. It straddles Ethereum with Titan X, and then it bridges over that value onto Pulsechain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really an interesting project that they're putting together there. And I'm talking to Sloth was there for a little bit, but I mean, any one of those guys I could talk to for hours because there's such a wealth of knowledge. I mean, most of them have created courses on crypto to explain and onboard people. I mean, just the value that everyone in this community brings is humbling.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting excited. I could care less what's going on in the community as far as whatever. I'm actually pretty pumped. I mean, I personally been getting deep in the weeds, doing all this graphic design work and doing some merch stuff that hasn't hit the streams. And I just been putting my head down and it's kind of reinvigorating me and kind of getting me pumped, and I just kind of know where this thing is going. I see everyone kind of getting all grumbly and mad. And it's like, and I'm sure some of our guests will speak to how fired up they are in spite of what everyone's doing on X. And so speaking of actually which, I'm going to bring forth a couple of our beloved guest here, Mr. Kool-Aid. Hello, sir.
What's going on, everyone?
Invest bang bang.
Bang bang.
Bang bang. Love it. But yeah, I mean, Kool-Aid, you would probably say, I mean, you've been deep in the weeds, doing what you're doing with Pulsar and your project that's coming. I mean, I'm sure you're not getting caught up in the weeds as far as what everyone's doing on X. I mean, I'm sure you're just excited for what you guys are doing.
I mean, yeah, I can talk about systems on basically about anything. But What are you referring to in the weeds? So are we talking about eHex debacle? Are we talking about meme coin shenanigans? Like, where do we want to direct that?
Take your pick.
Well, you've been in the weeds as far as your development, so you've been probably bullish on what you know is coming in your space. That sometimes maybe you don't really care for what's going on outside of your bubble. I mean, maybe you do, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But I mean, there's probably a lot of excitement on your end of the table as far as what you know is coming.
Yeah, well, not only are we in the tangential, like possibly last bull market before fintech comes in, we also are Series 1 coin. We have a lot of stuff being built. We're developing an ecosystem that revolves around the ideals that we've learned through being hexagons for all this time. And those take time to mature. You can't grow the proverbial apple tree in a day. But on our end, we're trying to do a lot of things differently to bind two L1s together with sacrifices, with ripping apart mechanics and not just forking things, by rebuilding structure and infrastructure from the ground up, not taking a utility mindset, but actually trying to rewire the roots. And that is exciting inherently of itself, regardless of anything. But when you take a look at how systems work and how people react to them, that's a different kind of narrative. That's social consensus. Because again, Richard didn't say EX is dead, nor did he say sell your EX. He hinted about liquidity and utility better on Pulse. That's it. People read into the Messiah complex and the mob mentality just as equally. And without having a roadmap of what actually was said, people read into it. And because they read into it, off they go. And, it's bumper cars. I can tell you quickly what's going to happen with EHEX. Like when PT shares rip and they go up, there's nothing wrong with ET shares. Nothing at all. Let's just take the analogy. If you had a yacht or a G5 airplane, do you really care about the cost of fuel? No, you don't. You've outgrown the cost of fuel. You want a supercar? Do you really care how much it costs to replace a bumper on a Lamborghini if you want your Win Lambo? No, you don't care about that. So when fintech and let's just say an ETH ETF gets approved, they're not going to go play on Polygon. They're not going to play on Pulsechain. They're not going to play on Avalanche. They're going to stay on the native system that their ETF and everything was conglomerated around. And at that time, you'll see institutional investment if PT shares and all the rest of that rips and does all the rest that they can do on their native chain. And that's an interesting binding of mechanisms. And that's, again, where it's important instead of worrying about mob mentality or what you think somebody said on the internet, look at how things weigh against each other. That actually gives you more utility, or circular loops, if you want to rip it back down to system design. The fox and the hare. If you have all the foxes eat all the rabbits, they don't eat just all the rabbits, but the generation of rabbits that they would have eaten inherently of that. So you have to understand how all those things come back together inherently as a whole.
Amen. Max,
Well,
you've been rolling with the Forge here. I mean, when you think about adoption, what have you guys been working on as far as, like, I know, like, I was asked by AJ Ripsey, he's like, hey, have you got your NFT yet? Yeah. I was like, no. I was kind of like but like, tell me a little bit more about it so I can get like bullish and fired up about it. Oh, look at you, Batch, over there saying I got my. Yeah. I'm sure Kool-Aid has his, plenty of them.
Yeah, they're still accepting people on the Forge Council. So okay. If you're an influencer, if you are, sorry, what's the name of the people that analyze? Analysts? Yeah, if you're an analyst, if you're anyone in the space, if you're a dev, and you can lend some expertise to that, then hit up Mark. Mark is the face and brains behind a lot of the Forge and Curator. And they put 20 months bootstrapped effort into this before they even approached the Pulsechain community. And have never met someone out of the blue that has been that professional and honest, and he just does everything he says he's going to do. He does. He's a machine. And unfortunately, in crypto, because there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of corruption involved, right? So most of the Pulse pads or launch pads that we've seen are open to corruption, right? It's like, hey, say some good stuff, and that's been around as long as Bitcoin has been around, where it's like bribe someone that has a big following, or bribe whoever owns a popular web page to put your stuff front and center, get you the attention that you need. And usually they just cut those people in on the rug pull. So we've seen rug pull after rug pull after rug pull. We've seen VCs step in with ridiculous amounts of money because they just want that first mover advantage. They want that first 10x or 100x on a coin, and they don't give a shit about the communities. They don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about the tech. They're literally just psychopaths. And there's a place for psychopaths. There's a place for money. There's a place for bankers. But people confuse it for community. There's a lot of astroturf out there where people are pretending to be a community, and you can tell really quickly, especially when you meet people in person. Like, I've met each one of you people in person. I know you're a genuine good human being that has your heart in the right place. Like, you can't fake that. You guys are good dudes. And Fashion Coder, everyone on my stream today, even the people that are trying their hardest to get something launched, they've got the right intention and their hearts in the right place. And the Forge and Curator are the first launch pad that I've seen where they have checks and balances, to where you would have to not only bribe 4 different people, you'd have to continually bribe those 4 people and bribe the entire community of token holders and NFT holders to pull one over on the masses. And so the way that he put it's basically like the Byzantine generals problem that Satoshi solved. It's better to do what's in the interest. It's more profitable to do what's in the best interests of everybody than to screw other people over. And so that's how the miners in Bitcoin worked for so long, even though it was it's not a great technology or a great coin by any means. It still was Satoshi solving the Byzantine generals problem with the mining that was revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head about it's corruption, whether you have crony capitalism or socialism or any other idiom of how when humans have profitability, they usually act in their best interest. Now with interoperable, let's call them machines, a lot of that can be greased up so it happens by default. It's going to be very interesting to see if we go to a ecosystem where people get paid to watch ads, experience things. If you're paid to be entertained, and you'll have a pure market fit instead of only relocating it to the top cast of systems. Not even a class system; it's just a cast of people that have access to that kind of thing. But there's a lot of things that can change now in this time to weed out the corruption, to change the again, it's the narrative and the paradigm of the haves and the have-nots technically have an even playing field at this exact moment in time. And they're gonna come for that. I mean, that's obvious. Power always does not want to relinquish power. And that's why it's in our all's best interest to educate and facilitate the ability to take that narrative and take that self-sovereignty so we avoid the corruption and itemize it when it comes out.
Yeah. I love it.
Hey, so I bought some of them NFT things and sent my money to some imaginary address that was on that website. And so for the lay people at home with crayons, what's the next step? How does this work?
Well, I forget the timeline that Mark was referring to last time I spoke to him. I believe he's going to be on Discourse Syndicate either tonight or tomorrow night. Actually, I think it's Monday night. But either way, he's going to be on Discourse Syndicate talking to the captain and getting ready to launch their incubation and their trial period of like the first handful of cases, like just experimental cases. So they're going to go through several projects and give them the whole experience of feedback and AMA and analysts. Not that they haven't already done that on a ton of projects, but they're going to start doing it with the NFTs and the tokens and the slashing and rewards implemented. So that's what they're working on launching now, is implementing that part of the checks and balance system and rewarding people who are contributing to that. And I believe that the amount of NFTs that you have will also determine your amount of the share of those projects. So if I show up, like I've got mine that I've been trying to set up on the Forge, and I can allocate a certain percentage of tokens or NFTs when I launch to the community. And so if you've got a whole bunch of those NFTs, it's like T-shares in the Hex payout system. You're going to get a reward from that project that is thanking the community for helping them launch.
Very cool.
So many yield bearing projects it's just amazing. I mean, there's just like an endless supply of opportunities that are coming our way. I mean, it's like this wave of yield. Nothing to be sad about there.
I think one thing interesting is that yield doesn't technically have to be monetary value. It can be exclusivity, access, knowledge, all sorts of other things. When people look about yield, they're primarily focused on a pump and dump. Or what can I get out before it crashes? What can I do to maintain myself and all the rest of that type of things? But realistically, the yield is the conglomerate and glue that makes multiple other things happen. And it's not strictly just on dollar signs, because remember, we're not a fiat-based ecosystem, but people still think that way, and they haven't been retrained on how to change their worldview on what they feel that the real yield is. And the real yield, ideally, at the end of the day, is growth.
Yeah. So, the title of this, the Launchpad and adoption on Pulsechain, like I love it how everyone's doing their thing, and like to PulseRay's, point about everyone, has good intentions. There's going to be some bad actors, what have you, but overall, collectively, like you pretty much know, who's launching, or founders for the most part. There's good private groups like Crypto Kool-Aid knows, and you guys, so you guys kind of know each other and can speak of it, but everyone just doing their own thing for cross marketing and adoption and offering the olive branch to reach across chain. This is going to be, in my opinion, like a multi-chain cycle where it's becoming easier and easier. The gates are coming down. We're not a walled garden, so to speak, anymore. Are you guys for PLS being more accessible to the masses by being on an exchange? What's your take on that one?
I mean, I can go. Well, I mean, I guess what's really the issue is the onboarding side to go from Changely automatically to Pulse and then have Pulse is the onboard issue. You're so attached to Coinbase and Gemini that you can't go through Coast when they get their stuff back up. Putting it on a centralized exchange or a centralized, let's say, DApp, isn't a horrible thing as long as it's bootstrapped into the decentralized aspect. Because one thing that's really interesting about Titan system that they did is they straight out do not want it on exchanges. Same thing that ideally we want in pure DeFi, but for some reason people still want to take the easy way TLDR to acquire something, rather than understanding the process of getting it there. So yeah, you can buy Pulsechain on a SEX, but you're not holding it in a self-sovereign wallet. If you're just doing it just to get it on board, great. I mean, obviously you should know when you use a SEX or a fiat on and off ramp, get it off or on. That is what you do. You do not leave it there. But if you give people the complacency that storing it on someone else's server that you don't have access to if shit hits the brick, it's probably not the best advice. However, for some damned reason, people think you need to be this tall to ride the ride. And for them, it's seeing it on Sex and seeing it on the top of CoinMarketCap, regardless if CoinMarketCap is already paid for by ill actors. And they don't even care about the corruption, or they don't know about it. I mean, both are fair. But more eyes is always better. As long as the Sex has to buy it off a market, because Richard's not giving them anything. I mean, that's if you buy it fair market, you can do what you want with it, just like you would if you were a whale or providing liquidity. I mean, all those are technically the same thing. It's just how are people getting access to the tool to make it happen. So in that sense of the realm, yeah, sure. There's OTC deals. Yeah, maybe sometimes some kind of third party is necessary for those kind of deals. And that's technically not a Sex, but it is. It's a way to have a third party pass hands for large amounts of money. It's why money transmit licenses are necessary and all the rest of that. So it's in the perspective of the thing is, I guess, where the real inherent thing is, just to have it where you can press an app on your phone. Well, heck, Scout now, I should do that. So yeah, it really kind of depends on how that narrative's changed. What do you guys think?
I see this going one of two ways. I think all the points that you made are really valid, and I think that you brought a really good perspective to this idea. The two things I think may happen in the future is either A, we get so big and so powerful that they look ridiculous for not including us and not adding us to their Sex, or our dexes become the norm. Our dexes grow so much in popularity and trust and credibility that the dexes clearly overtake the Sexes. Those are the two routes I see might happen.
It dovetails back into carrier pigeon maximalism, fax machine maximalism, and high-speed internet. Nobody's backtracking to carrier pigeon maximalism. It's just not going to happen. Sorry, guys. Once you get flying cars, are you really going to ride a bike to get to work if you can just fly and get there? No, you're going to take the leisurely way. If you want to enjoy a bike ride, you take a bike ride, but you're not going to be forced to walk uphill both ways and no shoes in the snow, right? It's as old grandpappies used to say. But I think the dexes will take that superiority, and they just have to conform at that point. So a dex will be very similar, or a Sex will be very similar to a dex, in particular use cases, regulation, all the rest of that, if they have to go that. And again, that I guess comes down to more regulation and not use case.
Yeah. So, I mean, for now, we still need an on-ramp, right? So slowly we're getting there, like OX and Coast and whatnot. But for the most part, as it stands now, you still got to get fiat wire transfer, ideally over ACH, into the Sex. Treat it like a bathroom, get in and get out, and then put it in your sovereign, wallet that you hold your keys to that has your crypto, right? So a necessary evil for now until smarter people and things become more mainstream. But once we, let's say you get listed on one centralized exchange, others may notice and become, and maybe it turns into a snowball effect. Either way, I think it's a happy medium. Things just we all want the world to be DeFi, but majority of it will be, but you still may have some little pieces that you need for now.
Yeah, and again, the Sex. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, and I was going to say that's when their education begins. When we get our name in lights, that's when people start YouTubing. They start finding crypto coffee and what is Pulsechain, and then what is DeFi, and then how to get off the Sex, and hear all the good voices such as you, Kool-Aid, teaching people how to get out of the dirty old bathroom of Coinbase and get over to your wallet.
Yeah, and I mean, if those entities, whatever entities they are, buy it decentralized, then it really doesn't matter. Like, everyone has their own place in a universal noded network. I mean, remember, the first Bitcoin was actually EverQuest gold mining. The first blockchain was technically like ham radio. The first DEX was the World of Warcraft marketplace. First fucking NFT, if you really want to consider it, is an email attachment because it had a read-write receipt that acknowledged, hey, I got this thing. It's not PC load letter in your fax machine or lost in the snail mail. So those technologies do critically mandate how the future works and how the future throughput of those things work. People will have to get along with this type of thing, just like ripping someone's cell phone away from them. Now they don't know how to use a map. Now they don't know how to get on the street. Now they don't know how to access their bank account because they're trying to pay with Apple Pay instead of actually having a physical card. It is the way of the world. And what's really going to technically change it is the younger generation, because they already intrinsically will never walk into a library. Why would they go to a museum? They're never going to know what a Dewey Decimal System is. They probably will never learn how to read a paper map now. I mean, when I was truck driving in 2002, it was basically before all GPS. I had to pull out a laptop and strap something to the top of my semi-truck, and I only used it when I was like New York City. But we can already see that the evolution of how those kids are 7 years old, they'll pick up the piece of technology and intrinsically understand it. Whereas, I'm 42, the cascade another 15 years forward. The people that are in their 65s do struggle with this, but they're also going to be struggling with the fact that they may not get Social Security by the time it's allowed to them or something of that nature. So the amount of weight put into economic energy of just Social Security alone that we pay by default, that may or may not, definitely won't be around. And all of us are, able to retire, or it gets pushed out to age 95. But yeah, the kids that are learning DeFi, learning how to make intrinsic money, learning how to spin up channels or monetize some kind of asset early on, they're going to have a different playground to live in. And it won't be the same one that all of us did when we were kids playing kick the can or all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was to say crypto is light years ahead of the rest of the world that doesn't understand what it is yet. And the Pulsechain community is light years ahead of crypto. So we're light years ahead of light years. And sometimes we feel kind of crazy and we feel really impatient about the fact that we don't have everything up and running like we'd like. And we don't have the fiat on-ramps and off-ramps. Like we should have 6 OX coasts running. You know what I'm saying? I love OX coasts because I don't have to go through Ethereum or Bitcoin to cash in out, So we've got to remember that we're like sorceress, we're like the people that imagined electricity in the dark ages. We're like, wouldn't it be cool if one day you walked into a room and you were able to hit a button and the room lit up and they're like, burn that guy, he's a witch. That's the way we're treated in a lot of circles right now, especially when it comes to finance and things. But going back to what you guys were talking about earlier, can you imagine if your ISP provider would not let you log on to Amazon or Netflix or Facebook? Like that ISP would look like a complete fool. And someday the people that don't embrace the Pulsechain community are going to look like complete fools. It's just going to be so black and white. It's going to be overwhelmingly more useful. Like what was the quote from Buckminster Fuller? He says, you don't beat a system by taking it on head on. You build a better system. And there's so many builders in our community right now building better systems, better money, better games, better casinos, and a better community, right? Like it's a lot easier to build a better community than to go convince everyone of the Bitcoin maxis that we have something better. You're better off spending your time onboarding people than helping de-educate, the masses that are still in the old blockchain thinking of like, oh, this is just the new gold, and I store it on my computer, and that's what it does. Like that's just an old paradigm that is not going to serve people in the future.
It's a weird thing about like what you just said, which is interesting, is that it's harder to de-educate someone that knows just enough that they're dangerously stupid than to educate someone that actually is curious and knows nothing. I'd always rather teach someone that has no knowledge rather than jaded knowledge and didn't have the motivation to answer their questions and answer their own identity of where did they learn it and is it still valid? Because everything changes as you go through it. That's the the beautiful thing of life. The journey is everything. And to understand that, you have to sometimes take a step back and digest what you learned, what you took away, and how do you evolve that. I mean, as a system designer, that's basically what we do, is we stack systems on top of systems that react on top of systems. And we really don't know what's going to happen until we unleash the magical pinball that bounces around 1,000 different directions, but we have to pivot in real time. And I think that's what people that are ready to learn will do, is they'll start to pivot if they know where to start, because the first real headache is you don't know what you don't know. I always say do your own research, and it's kind of like a cart for the horse, because what research do I need to know before I know if I've researched enough, or if it's credible, or if it is still viable. I mean, hell, watch a crypto video from 2 years ago. That's basically caveman talk. Things move too fast in this ecosystem due to the interoperability of Moore's law and Metcalfe's law combined by everyone's internet throughput. I mean, look how far we've come just in the last 60 years compared to the last 6,000 years. And that scale is compounding, and it does move at a massive attack.
Yeah. So to your point, if I can remember, it's easier, yes, to bring on a new no coiner than to try to change the mind of a Bitcoiner, right? Like, it's just, you're not going to get that ROI. You're not even looking for ROI on your time, right? You're better off just educating somebody, that wants to learn and doesn't have bad habits. It's like hiring this experienced guy to come onto the construction job site, and he's been doing it for 20 years and he's stuck in his ways. He doesn't want to change or anything. And now it's like, but we're doing things more efficiently and blah, blah, blah. But yet he's the cog in the wheel or this and that. So yeah, all those things, but great points as usual.
Well, I was really inspired earlier today by Giffordware and Kool-Aid when they were bringing up the concept of stopping the leaks in the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Stopping the leaks in the boat. Can you give us a quick analogy of Bitcoin's leaks in their boat, Ethereum's leaks in their boat, and then bring us all the way to Pulsechain and Pulsar with that analogy?
Yeah. Let's break down some systems. So, Bitcoin inherently of itself is proof of power, right? First, it was decentralized power, and you could do it inherently of yourself as a unit of one. Because that backup on how the system can lean or load eventually fills up, that you need more people to lift that jar or that weight up. Because technically the mathematical calculation is getting more complex. It's harder to crack. Well, that's more of a load that you need power to get through. Well, then you add pools, right? So those pools are necessary to basically mine your Bitcoin or to disperse the amount of power necessary to calculate the steam in the engine that you need to push. Well, then we had Ethereum, which is still proof of work at that point, but it's proof of programming. And so with proof of programming, we're taking this proof of work metric, but we're adding the EVM complex of how all the complexities can be called, how to turn it into a virtual machine. But when you need more juice out of the virtual machine, guess what? It costs more power. Or let's revolve it now to gas, because we've moved from strictly a steam engine machine where you're building up pressure to move a revolution of a flywheel to now needing the calculation itself to be done because it's proof of programming. That's where we got hit on a T-share. So let's take that next slice, because all of us are hexagons. So we have a T-share, which is proof of time. And so at proof of time, now we're using the EVM side, which is still proof of programming, but it still needs proof of power, or now proof of stake, which is resolution of power, nodes of power, sockets, if you will. Technically now like mining farms in Bitcoin. So we can see the correlation between those two ideals, but one does one thing, one can do many, but costs more juice. So T-share, proof of time. So now we've learned carrot and stick, tongue-in-cheek mechanics of what proof of time does for you. And if Hex never got pulled from Ethereum, let's just say never launched Pulse. I call Zen proof of gas because of the intrinsic cost of gas to mint and unmint. But if Pulse or Hex never moved from Ethereum, the gas cost to unstake your Hex would have been proof of gas, because of the fact that if you didn't have the financial, let's call it wherewithal, to be able to unstake that, you would have bled. And where would that bled? Gone back to the staker class. So that does give a caste-based system again on who can access a particular throughput. So we have Zen. Basically, it's an interesting thought experiment. But what it did is created fair launch crypto as a narrative and a saber rattling call again. I mean, of course, we all love the OA. OA is fantastic. Why? Because it puts power into an entity that we actually trust. But if they're not from our cut of cloth, they don't have that kind of, let's call it native security with that type of method. They automatically assume the corruption that we were talking about before. So we have proof of gas as a concept, but then creating fair launch. Now, we moved to Pulsechain. What Pulsechain's interesting because their sister EVMs post proof of stake, which means that any upgrade in tangent can run in parallel with each other. That's very, very, very good. That's why, maybe one day some proof of mining, ETH POW, ETH Fair, any of the rest of that stuff could come back to do something like ETH Classic. But since the EVM machine, that it is moving in tandem, like two different train lines moving together, we now can have cross upgrades. Difference is that a lot of people on Ethereum don't really care for either Richard Hart, or they've been usurped by the narrative inherently of itself, but they still work in tandem sisters. Okay, so Pulsechain. Now, Pulse R is interesting because Titan X, we can kind of get into the weeds on that if anybody want to, but it's actually a very interesting set of mechanics that creates proof of ETH. And that's why when Gifford and I were looking at this, we were like, well, we can actually build on a lot of these components that there weren't necessarily in Hex, but it's a very, very, very different dessert. Sometimes you want cake, sometimes you want pie. So both are technically desserts on how you have to understand what the system actually does instead of pointing fingers, us versus them, mob mentality. No, silly. But also a lot of them haven't been architects, system designers, or really put thought into, for example, Hex, E-Hex, P-Hex. I could care less, but tell you what, if you're holding liquid Hex, you're not on the T-share train. If you're not on the T-share train, you get none of the benefits of the yield. You get none of the benefits of, let's just say, a icosahedron. You get none of the benefits of communist. You got none of the benefits of anything else that came if you were on the T-share train. So that inherently has a cost on one side or the other. Pulsechain allows us to do those things cheaper, but it's not cheaper because it's theoretically better. It got scaled by a ratio of zeros that makes it cheaper. So if you have the network effect that it gets more expensive, guess what? It's going to be expensive. Good for us because we're wealthy. Yay. But you know what? You didn't solve it. You made it usable. And so what we're doing at Pulsar is very interesting as multiple different irons in the forge, but one of the bigger pillars is creation, not inflation. So we do have zero inflation. Go through the mechanics on how that works, but that is a huge thing because people want their tasty little yield. Well, you're creating inflation. People want their tasty little airdrops. You're creating inflation. The OA absorbed a lot of that inflation because on the books, numbers were vastly different than what's actually available in liquid. So that's another note that you need to understand. But another thing with Pulsar is no leaky boat. And with no leaky boat, we take a lot of pride in looking at how externalities could detract from the system, whether that's hops and swaps, whether that's, inflation later on down the road. And then the third real big pillar is permeable tokenomics. And just like I was saying, proof of power, proof of time, proof of programming, proof of gas, proof of ETH, the protocol fee is your necessary, let's call it, energy that you're bringing into the system. And for our system, 90% of that economic energy actually goes to buy and burn Pulsar off the market. So not only do we not have inflation, if you decide to create Pulsar by minting it, which is taking ETH and Titan X and take them both into a system, we do a bunch of magic we can get into. You receive your tokens immediately. We handle the bridging. We handle everything in the locked V2 liquidity pool, all sorts of that. But that economic energy that you put, 90% of that can only do one thing, and it's buy and burn Pulsar and take it off the market. So by participating in the creation aspect, you are creating a larger rocket launcher for us to completely decimate the supply. But the cool part is you really don't need it, because inherently of itself, the inflation problem is where you're nipping yourself in the butt. ETH is going to go up in value, going to be harder to create inherently of itself. Titan has many mechanics that make it harder to create based on time. We all understand a T-share, right? It's the same thing, but just some of the vernacular has been ripped apart and applied in a different way. So those two metrics alone make it harder and harder to create the asset. The buy and burn is an overwatcher that can immediately create the ceiling, which is interesting. If you go back to icosahedron, what we learned from that, what we learned from, let's say, the inflation bonus that was given for the 10x multipliers, well, that dramatically changed the system. Those are caveats that you have to learn to how to digest the whole thing. But those are some of the, there's so much under the Pulsar onion that you can rip apart. But again, no leaky boat means take the time to figure out what is the best path of resistance and what is the most beneficial for the system inherently. And if it's the best for the system, it's going to be best for the user in the long run.
Yeah.
To quote my kids, bruh, like, bruh, did I say light years ahead of light years ahead of light years? My brain was screaming uncle, and I was following along like, holy shit. Sorry, go. I didn't mean to jump in and cut you off, Bets. I saw you wanted to jump in there.
So Crypto Kool-Aid. So the buy and burn mechanism, is that on the back end all via smart contract and automated? Are there any like small admin keys to adjust percentages or good admin things to adjust
so
little
all
things?
smart contracts must be called in some way, shape, or form. There is no automatic button in blockchain, period. In fact, if nobody touches a T-share at all, the day doesn't roll over, really, theoretically. It has to do that, and then it calculates backwards from the time that it was poked to be like, hi, dink, dink, I did something. Then it will run the calculation. That's why it gets so expensive to backtest every day that you have calculated on what somebody does based on that thing. But if nobody touches it, it's kind of sitting dormant till somebody pokes it again. So yes, there is a button, and there will be, I believe, an incentive that comes down to it to do it. But as far as the admin keys, we can adjust slippage and a percentage numbers of the buy and burn, because technically you don't want a self-guided boat in the very fledgling phase of something being taken off. That's why they have things called training wheels. But just because there's training wheels doesn't mean that you're riding your bike in the correct direction she'd be going. It's the one difference between Giffordware and I, is that both of us are architects and designers. You really don't see a lot of crypto pros summoning game devs and designers and thinking out full bulletproof systems. Remember, Dev Kyle was the one that did the economics audit and ran the simulations to see how Hex works. Real people run real simulations, or they're done it enough times that they can, shoot from the hip and they're pretty confident they know what it can do. But remember, a simulation inherently of itself still has to deal with its mechanics that it's built with, the system design, the board that it's built on, and then also what social consensus says is what the player does or the people do in the ecosystem to rock said boat. That's why there's ballast in a ship. It's so it could load balance. As far as the admin key stuff, we're as close as you can bloody get across the board. A little bit of a tuning, but once the system's fairly up and running, we always want to renounce that contract. But as far as where the liquidity pools go, which is really the bare thing that we're trying to do, is establish infrastructure. Those are admin key free. Again, or even V2s. We don't even take any of the fees that come in. It keeps stacking like a compounding pancake. That way, the thickest pool of that exists in that ecosystem. And it even perks to give the users credit for, their Titan buy and burn, which there is a bonus when you get to a particular number. You get a permanent 8% bonus on minting. Well, as it gets harder and harder to mine, think of that like 8% juice in your air quote power. If we're talking about Bitcoin or your mining pool or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's really kind of fascinating when you kind of look at all these systems and rip it apart, especially from the dovetail of all of us that have seen it, seen people try to rip it off, seen what happened, and looked at those breadcrumbs. It's not necessarily about trying to clone something. It's trying to understand something and rebuild it, right? There's multiple ways to make fire. It doesn't mean that there's only one, but fire is important to understand if you want to do many things.
Yeah. So the sloshing back and forth. Oh, I remember. So you are going to encourage people building on top of Pulsar, or not encourage, but whatever. It's an option, right, for somebody to build on top of.
Of course.
And if so, like we're seeing with Titan X, like there's an 8% incentive for those to build on top. What's your?
Yeah, I think that was one of the more interesting parts is that Richard never put any hooks on X to have that kind of ecosystem. However, Alex, when he actually created a system to rapid share, had those incentives and those hooks in place. So that was a very interesting understanding to come back and now look at how those things work. At a infrastructure layer, there's no real need for that at this particular moment in time. Would someone like me and Gifford be thinking about that? I'm pretty sure that's an interesting possibility now, wouldn't it? But to keep things easy, if just me explaining something that I think is easy is complex, then adding the complexity probably isn't a stage for today, right? Because at that point, you're not really helping, right? It's my old riddle. I mean, I think I've tossed to all these guys. What is humankind's most important first commodity?
Repeat the question, please.
What was humanity's first most important commodity?
I'm going to go with beards on this one.
Possibly. You don't start off with one, though. Any questions?
Yeah.
There's no wrong answer. It's just understanding the riddle.
Yeah, I'm not a game guy, so
It's not even a game guy. Let's just say fire. Well, how are you going to get your tools?
Yeah, so fuel, oxygen.
Those are necessities. Those aren't commodities. Love isn't a commodity. I mean, technically, it's something that is good, but in the sense of a commodity. So let's say language. Well, what happens if you're stranded on an island and can't talk to anyone? Let's just say farming. Well, what happened? Or hunting. Let's just say hunting. But what are you going to put the lion on your shoulders and carry it back? The answer to the riddle is beasts of burden. Because with beasts of burden, you have the ability to travel, to have language. You have the ability to make trade. You have the ability to farm and do all the rest of that. You have the ability to take in and expose. You have the ability to marry and tithe for all the rest of that. So if we take beasts of burden, or air quote horses, but it can be camels, asses, whatever the fuck you want to have. Where are all the horses now? Well, if they're sitting in a little ranch and being Gundam style, well, that's no longer a commodity. It's a luxury. The commodity then are horse-powered machines that are everywhere. And so our entire livelihood of humanity that made us where we could forage, feast, survive, travel, escape was beasts of burden, horses. Now people just turn on their car and all that horsepower is there. All that power is there. But you don't think about it. It's just convenient. So the luxury of horses are actually taking care of a real one that have no fucking use, because your car is more horsepower than that horse could ever do. Understanding that is the same tacticalness to understand how levees and systems work, and digesting what is the evolution of horsepower and how do we ratchet that up in many different ways, from time, which is technically the most one you can't buy back, to utility and follow through. But you first need to have infrastructure. But yes, to answer your question, there could be some interesting things built on that for a future. And, Pulsar, if you caught any of the streams, is going to be expensive for a reason. And there's 0 founder tokens. It's just as expensive for me as it is for everyone else. Why? Because we're trying to build a perpetual motion machine that has a very, very, very focused first strike, second strike, third strike. Very interesting things. There was a particular token mentioned at the very end of the stream today that I'm not going to mention. You guys got to figure it out. That may be a pretty interesting thing as well. We like to build, especially GIF and I. Like GIF and I love to do this shit. And it's going to be very interesting to approach many different ideals that we have to bring it back to that refined line. And that's what you want, ideally. You don't want another dick with butts or the meme of the week, right? And it'll make your money go awesome, dope. For me, if I spend 5 years trying to make a game and the game shuts down and the IP gets pulled, it sucks for me. But I want to build a self-sustaining system that actually can survive more than the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year marker that most games get shut down at.
I think it's just amazing that you're bridging the bridging aspect that you guys are doing. I'm excited to see what you guys do in the future as far as potentially bootstrapping other communities and other ecosystems and offering the same. It's going to be fun to watch this play out, the journey of this, because I was going to give a conversation with Kinetics here about, I had this little epiphany about you guys doing similar things with even like the ship community and doing all kinds of different things and fun techniques to truly allow them to see the power of Pulsechain and the burning mechanisms and the bridges. I mean, if one bridge is one, then can we build 50 of them?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And here's an even another thought bubble. Because ePulsar is an ERC bridged on over, I wonder what could happen to PRCs that were around when we forked Pulsechain. Once we start to show, it just takes one success to make fire, right? You can rub a rock together 1,000 times. It just takes one till you understand how it works. And after that, you can start to deploy and replicate. More importantly, other people can see it and understand what it is. And many different layers in what we're trying to accomplish here, with many different narratives to many different communities, all in a simple infrastructure brushstroke. But there is a lot that can be compounded on. And yeah, that's another narrative, is when Ethereum fees are too high, yeah, you can go to a layer 2, you can go to Polygon, you can go to Matic, all the rest of that. But have anyone had a copy of their ERCs on a sister chain that's just waiting to be shown how to plug in that shit? Everyone's going to say Link because it's the easiest one to say, but sure, oracles are kind of neat in crypto land. So why wouldn't you want something of that nature on some other side pocket that also connects into your other asset? You know, when you have Bluetooth on your phone, it doesn't just go to one device and one device only. And so you have to understand how those things tangentially work together to strike that first thing, to build those breadcrumb simulations and narratives that help other people figure it out.
So, question for any of you guys, and thank you, Crypto Kool-Aid. Yeah, I learn every time I listen to you. The Rabby wallet. Any of you guys using the Rabby wallet?
I loved it till I had 2 transactions get stuck. One for mine and one for a custodian. And Gifford was saying, I don't know how to be either impressed or worried that you somehow pulled this off, but you overwrote your nonce and kept on going. So you can't relinquish it. And I saw another one that got stuck. And after that, I'm like, I'm going to go back to MetaMask for a while. There's some UI UX stuff that when the internet money was going out, that just it just boggled my workflow. But internet money, I had a great experience with it. Rabby was fantastic for what it gave. It kind of gets a little moody on how it wants to change chains. So accessing like Casahedron on Pulsechain is very difficult in Rabby because it still thinks you're on Ethereum, whereas MetaMask, you have a hard flippy button.
Mm-hmm. Have I been missing that hard? Well, I've seen on Rabby have the flip button, but I haven't seen on MetaMask flippy button, because like if I'm trying to change one Trezor to another Trezor, like I gotta close the browser, open it back up to get things to jive again.
It's a nightmare. That's why I really enjoyed Rabby. Till I had 2 transactions get stuck. One from my personal wallet and one for Buddy that I custodian for. And at that point, it was too risky at this exact juncture in time, because I tried everything. Even Rags tried to pop on and help me. And same with Kinetics. It's not like I'm an idiot. I just need a sanity check to be like, why? A, can I not follow the instructions? Well, B, also, let's be realistic. Our block explorers suck. So trying to actually troubleshoot something is kind of a nightmare. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes don't. Got to go to 30 different sites. One of them may work. That's all going to get fixed. I mean, they were indexing, I believe, was what the cause of it.
Kind of like PulseX. Eventually, we'll get some additional bells and whistles, right? Like
Sure.
It's not going to just be a plain Jane forever.
Sure. But remember, the plain Jane PulseX V1 is how you earn ink. So it depends on what you want and what you need to do.
Okay, so since you brought that up, do you think that was a fortunate mistake, or do you think that was initially all by design, the V1, V2 on PulseX?
I think it's by design. Well, it also, excuse me. We also didn't have V3 being exclusive yet at that time. So you kind of have to partition like a lot of things in blocks of time and space and how they work together. So I think there was definitely a cohesive choice that you can only earn ink by something that, let's just say, Greg the Duck can decide that magically makes pools for. Yeah, that's pretty much by design. I even sent old Greg up through the ethers flowchart on how to build some stuff on ink. I don't know, two maybe months after Pulse launch. I mean, hell, it could have even been before when RH wasn't speaking about it. It's my least favorite coin or blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I can do a system on it. But I think it's now interesting. It's rise up, rise down, and people are starting to actually understand the utility of it. And it's the same, let's call it the same jargon that we really didn't understand how much a T-share had components and use cases till Alex wrapped it with HSIs, HMIs in the future, et cetera, et cetera. That kind of knocked everyone in the face. Like, oh yeah, this is actually an NFT, not a silly little monkey. There's things about wrapping that are really important when you understand what that system is. So ink, I think, will be a very interesting play because people will want to use 9mm, Freedom Swap when it comes out, like all sorts of other stuff that are going to be coming. But you can only earn ink, as far as I know, on V1 pools that Greg the Duck mandates from, the ethers. So we'll see what happens, but that does build competition and complexity, which is good, right? You want, I mean, hell, everyone wants to see the V1 chart of any coin because it has the longest tail of price history. So that way, when you look at the V2 or the V3, the largest pool doesn't have that big fat round candle. Yeah. So that V1 thing is important. The question is, does liquidity stay there? With V1 PulseX, since that's the only way to get ink, there's a pretty good chance that the liquidity is going to stay there because there's going to be ink people farming.
Let me ask a question real quick. They say that PulseX is the native token for PulseX for the exchange, but everything is routed through ink. So wouldn't that technically make ink the native token for PulseX?
When you go to that level, that's more of a Giphy question because it's more technical as to how everything actually moves through its node and throughput. And I really don't push like a lot of stuff through, so I don't do that more enough to actually be checking it. Also, theoretically, I'd like a good block explorer to see what I know what I'm doing. Like there is that. At the end of the day, I feel like if I need to try to figure out why something's happening, I feel like about Mr. Magoo driving a damn bus down a fucking mountain. I'm just like, I really don't understand why the site won't load or why these NFTs don't load on a particular website over here. It's like, is it something with us or is it an indexing problem? I don't know.
Yeah, Block Explorer is definitely top of the list of things. And of course, today Richard Hart said, if you want something, build it. But I don't know how to build a block explorer, and I don't think my devs do either.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, leave that for the people that do that the best. I mean, as much as we want all the shiny tools that we want, time requires them to be built correctly, not quickly. Right? You have, what is it? Fast, cheap, and good. You need to pick those battles, unfortunately, and I think that is important to understand that we're coming a long way very fast with all sorts of goodies. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I would say, God, ink has the potential to be almost what gas was for Neo, like an actual gas token or a utility that comes off that kind of ecosystem. Not really, but it's going to be interesting because it has its own half-life. It has its own utility, and it actually keeps those V1 things alive, even if it's reliquated just to the RH tokens that are in that pool. You don't get better order execution on Mateus or anything else that's coming on. But I think for the RH tokens, it stays in that, and it stays in house almost at that point too.
Do you foresee more farms opening up? I mean, it's probably a silly question, but it's just something that I've been kind of thinking that it's on the horizon soon, where we might see an expansion beyond the scope of RH products.
It really depends on what the maturity of that stuff is when it happens, I guess would be the first question. Is it reliable? Is it mature?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hell, let's take this as a narrative. Out of all of the things that anyone has ever built, I'd say Alex and Icosahedron, the one-man super machine, the white whale himself, probably would be the first non-RH thing that RH may respect due to not only his technical ability to what he did to a T-share, his history of being a good actor, his consistency and wanting to build. But if theoretically, to answer your question, something like Icosahedron wasn't put there with Alex's pedigree, what else would quantify that in your question, right? It is an easy gimme on how do we even rate that, because obviously wrapped stables coming over is fair. Obviously wrapped ETH is fair. Why? Because it holds economic energy, right? We were talking together, the power of that asset or that protocol fee, the thing that turns the horses on, right? It gives you the horsepower. That has power coming in, and that's why those farms and pools are encouraged. Out of that, it's going to be interesting to see.
I didn't know if there's any Ethereum ERC20 token that you know, that's kind of where I was kind of going with that one, as far as bootstrapping some community, and rather than the you know, at a certain point, I think RH will sound the alarm, you know, all in time.
I guess the real question is that by adding that, you know what you create inflation, not creation. Like, you're now going into the realm of what's more important, number go up or more product being dispersed, which people sell down, which creates dumping, which creates harvesting, which is good. It's part of this economic structure that we do live in. But it does create an externality.
Very true.
Give me 1 sec, guys. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So what's the latest and greatest on Texan? Since we're here on the Texan tailgate, what's the word on the street?
The word on the street. I hear that they are still pounding the drum in regards to freedom and sovereignty, and that's what I love about these guys. You know, as far as what they're doing. I mean, the movement of which, you know, they're kind of looking at Texans and standing up and saying, hey, enough's enough. I think, you know, that political cause is admirable in itself. But I think what these guys are doing behind closed doors as far as what's coming, I think, you know, Kool-Aid mentioned there. Obviously, there's something called Freedom Swap on the horizon. And I really don't know beyond that of what they have up their sleeves in regards to what it's going to do as far as a DEX. I mean, I'd imagine there's probably some type of, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'd imagine it has something to do with burning Texan. I mean, or something, you know what I mean? There's probably something within there, some type of mechanics that makes Texan, you know, more scarce. So that could be interesting. So it'll be interesting. You know, we look at
one of the
founders.
problems with Texan is that y'all are too damn loyal. Like I expected a lot more scraping and a lot more restaking from now, but everyone like feels like they're shooting their neighbor in the face if they take any profits from Texan. Like the community is stupid strong, stupid loyal. And I'm sorry I cut you off, but I had a really quick question. If someone threw a Hedron system on top of Texan, meaning you could wrap your stakes and sell them, do you think that'd bring economic energy to Texan, or do you think that would dilute the economic energy of Texan? This is something I've been thinking about for a year. Not that I'm going to throw a Hedron on Texan, but if someone built a wrapped stake on top of Texan, do you guys think that'd be a positive or negative?
That'd be interesting.
You know what came to mind? Sorry, go ahead. Say that again.
I said, are you thinking about developing it there?
Well, I mean, you'd have to have some devs sitting around doing nothing, which that doesn't exist. Every decent dev is working their ass off right now. But if you had a dev that could take a good look at Hedron and Icosa and launch the same thing on top of Texan, I think a lot of people that want to keep that economic energy wrapped in the stakes would have an opportunity to take profit without causing harm to the token. Because
it doesn't have to be the exact same thing, just like everything else. Like you can extract maybe the auctions. You know, you can pick and choose, but your general consensus of that, that would be interesting. As soon as you mentioned about the loyalty thing and all that, I was thinking about like the Watsa's NFTs, like, you know, that popped in my head, like, motherfuckers burn that shit already. Come on.
Yeah, well, they've burned less than 2,000 out of 22,000.
Yeah,
it's like a bunch of nerds at the bottom of a pool drowning, but they're in this like staring contest underwater, and they're all drowning one by one because they're not gonna lose this game of chicken. They're like, screw you. All these nerds want the high score on Whatsa. Not only that, but we know that people have lost their effing keys, right? We know people have lost their seed phrases and locked themselves out of their treasures. So there's some of those pinatas that will forever fill up with candy. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, and that's why I reposted, wouldn't it be awesome if Whatsa had a fixed supply? Or wouldn't it be awesome if Whatsa had more than one minting phase? Because everyone that saw that first phase that didn't jump in that window, they're all like, "Oh, I want some of those pinatas." And you can buy and sell them on the open market, but they're not all the same size. They're not all uniform. So it's kind of hard to get liquidity in that market.
And then that begs the question, you know, with Alex and V2, like, how's that gonna, like, are we gonna exchange those or change in those NFTs for Pulsechain? I mean, or V2, like, you know, man, excited. It should, you know, I think there were some lessons learned. I think there were some lessons learned taken away, hopefully, like too much supply, maybe the 10Xers, you know, like all that. You know, I think you guys touched on it as well, maybe, or I don't know. But
none of the Texans want to hurt the price of Texan, myself included. Like, we all want to see it to go to the moon, but hopefully someone comes up with a way to extract value without it directly dumping the coin on the market. Because like I said, I talked to people that have a lot of Texan, and they say, like, I'd love to scrape my 5% or my 11% next year, but then they've got to dump the coins on the market. No one wants to do that. So I mean,
or what
but
Crypto Kool-Aid's doing, create like an
burn.
LP, a back end thing. So
Yeah.
change the front end mechanics. So instead of going into your wallet, it goes into an LP, creates good habits of using an LP to exit out without hurting the chart. Like, just a whole, you push a button and everything magically happens on the back end. It's a lot of trust. Scrape an LP. There you go. Bang, bang.
Yeah,
Moondog's got it.
Bang,
The
bang.
Galaxy Brain Moondogs all over it.
and I'm sure this is all Monday morning quarterback, because I'm sure the team of Texan has
easy.
been like running through stuff in their mind, because they see people aren't scraping, people aren't dumping, people are holding for the most part. They're true blue loyal kids. So
And just to that point, like Pulsar, man, like taking that application, and bonding those two gig brains together and creating this, like, and then implementing that across chains, like you guys are touching on, like that just, oh man. And then, ooh, baby. I mean, I don't, yeah.
Ooh, baby. Yeah,
Baby,
I'm excited to see it play out, because like I said, the other day I was driving and I was like, oh, I gotta call Kinetics on this one, because I was starting to think, what if this really does do what they're talking about, and they start looking at other communities across the way and going, what if we could get them to come over and just burn their tokens and pair it up with some ETH and come over to Pulsechain and kind of do the similar mechanics that, all of a sudden Shib's like, screw ETH. We can't even trade our ETH over here. And they're like, we're going to just come over and burn our freaking Shib and bring some ETH and come over to Pulsechain and play.
yeah, Moondog brings up a really next question, a good point here. Next question: who's going to create the Texan token of perpetuals and have mass scrape LP bumping events in the ecosystem? And that's another great idea, because when Maximus DAO came out, it was brilliant idea. I mean, think about it. You get the best bonus that you're ever going to get, and you don't have to pay gas fees when you unwrap it in 15 years. Right. Plus, you get all the airdrops, all the yield, everything associated with Hex, with the Maximus DAO token. Unfortunately, when they released the perpetuals, instead of adding air to the balloon, they diluted the air into the perpetuals, because the only people that jumped into the perpetuals at that time were people that were already in Maximus DAO, like myself. So had they launch that on the following bull cycle, there might have been more air to fill up all those balloons. But right now, I mean, they brought it up on Tech Talk earlier, something like the Deci on ETH is like, you can get some silly amount of T-shares for your money if you go jump on Deci, because the arbitrage opportunities. And I know a lot of people that love playing the perp arbitrage. What do you think, Kool-Aid? We've gone off into the weeds here.
I love the weeds.
Good perp.
So what's interesting at proof of pooling is you've already locked in your time. So instead of pay your future self or any of the rest of that nonsense, it's actually how much time has been paid for you when you purchase something like that. Because time is the one thing you can't get back. Economic energy that actually pushed that into time has already been created. So that's where that ARB comes in, is that future thought of how much time is already on the ticker versus how much economic energy do I have to take and add the time also. It's interesting. The whole pooling aspect was an important strike that Dip and Gold Key did to try to combat the gas monster. All good, and more important is understanding the utility of binded grouped liquidity into a particular shared asset pool, because really, to quote Gladiator, Rome is the mob, right? But technically LP and pooling and liquidity is the mob in our ecosystem. So if that is the case, then what is the most important vector in something of proof of time, T-shares, right? It's the time technically spent. And what is the yield coming out of that time circuited loop? So, God, with all these damn lights, oh shit, I'm going to turn my fan up a little bit. I think that's a particular thing to consider with all the rest of that. Where in the weeds were you doing? Because Deci is how many years? I stopped paying attention to the timing and all the rest of it.
Deci's 10.
Deci's 10. I mean, let's be realistic. 10 years is a long damn time, but it's not in the eclipse of everything that's going on. So the reason that it possibly has its ARB ceiling is because that time's there. Once we get closer to what was the first one? I forgot. It was like 1 year, 3 year, 7 year, 10 year, right?
Yeah. So there was base is 1 year.
Base was the first one, right? And base already happened, right? It already unripped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then trio is 3, lucky is 7, Deci was 10.
That's right. So what was the ARB ceiling and chart and all the rest of that happened? Let's just say 1 month, 3 months before that happened. Because if you think in meters, like I'm a world builder, right? So I think of everything in meters. I look at cross sections on how many meters something takes to build. It's 4 meters for a ceiling. A human is 2 meters tall. Your kneecaps is basically 3/4 of a meter. So if you take something that only lasts a year, what happened in the last 3 months and what happened in the last month? Because you're doing percentages of 1, right? So 0.7, 0.9. That makes sense, or I lose you there in the weeds? Those ratios. Like, what was the ARB situation 3 months before, and then 1 month till it was unwrapped?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't follow that. I just know that like there's times when the perps are trading lower than the price of a T-share.
Of course,
so you can literally go buy T-shares off that market at a discount rate. You know,
what's funny is I had to do some wallet maintenance for some of the people that I custodian for, and it's been a while since I've actually looked into doing a whole bunch of that stuff because my stuff's very easily set out for the next 15 years. 1 year, or I get one biggie and one smallie every year. I just did simply. And I just saw that there are HSIs up on the market. I'm not sure if I was on the Pulsechain side or I was on the ETH side, but like there are a couple up in like 5 days. And I thought no one had been using the market for a while, or nothing had been coming due for a while. So I don't know because I haven't been following that. That's definitely something that the GIF or the Sloth or Jiang or Dev Huey or Crispy Man, that they got their fingers in that all the time.
Yeah.
Clearly, I understand it, but it's just I haven't had my eyeballs on it in quite a hot minute. But when you can kind of see how those breadcrumbs lay out, you can kind of take that ratio and flatten it out to understanding market conditions in the most brutal of bear for hex times based on, God, what would the price have been when base came out? Were we at under 10 cents?
I think so. And Moondog says right now you can buy 10-year T-shares already amortized 1.5 years at a 33-ish% discount from the T-share rate paid 1.5 years ago in EHEX terms on top of the EHEX current overcorrected undervalue. So, I mean, that's insane. Have you guys had...
Tip to you, good sir. That's the type of information that you need to...
Boom.
The thing is just that if you're not looking at it, it's very easy to miss something. And that's the other thing is I don't really play with my crypto too much, especially if I'm exhausted or I'm working around the clock, because you don't fuck with your retirement account when you're busy. Bad idea. But there's already enough to pay attention to when you're doing this. It's why you need sanity checks and good people in the community to keep dropping these bubbles of repositories so where you can do that. But yeah, that's an insane discount right now that you can go fatten up your 10-year T-share. And remember at that point, you're already at max ratio for
that goes along with Vet's point right here, where he said, they did too much with Maxi Team, et cetera, water, and let's not forget Poly. Sometimes less is more. And Vets, you can talk on the microphone. Like you don't have to just comment.
just meme. Just meme in.
Just jump in.
I know.
Like, bruh. Just start with
bruh.
Have you guys had Drix on the channel in the show yet?
Yeah, I believe he did hop in here. I don't know.
Well,
Drix is on point.
Good person.
and he laughs at my jokes. So he's like 3 thumbs up over
That's
here.
all you need. Laugh at the jokes, have a beard, X-ray approved.
Exactly.
But no, I think Vet's point is actually very fair and good. And again, no shade or everything, but tip of the hat. But no, this is
conversation.
It's not just conversation. This is fucking design. And these are systems to understand on how understanding dilution actually has a critical effect on how circular loops work. I can't stress this damn video enough. Mike Sellers, he's sitting in front of a podium. I think it's GDC 2016, but fuck, he wrote the book in systemic design 2006. I don't know. After you've been in the industry 10 plus 15 years, it's all imaginary fucking time money in your head. But so understanding circular loops goes back to rabbit and foxes every single time. You have more derivative based situational systems where they veer and they coagulate, almost like planets, how they have their own gravitational pull. When they get closer to something, they move it around it really fast and it shoots it back out and it slowly draws and comes back up. We have planets back there. Spaceship. But at the end of the day, those things do matter. You can dilute yourself by making things more complex when maybe a simple system could be more interesting. It doesn't have to be better, but interesting. And that was the hint thing that we were trying to kind of... At Pulsar, we don't want to fucking give people all the fucking answers. I don't want to hold anyone by the nose. I want to give them all the information they can teach themselves why, not what to buy. But if you take the idea and the idiom that particular mechanics mean you don't need healed, and it has something to even push the price ceiling forward to encourage that arbitrage, to make those sticky green candles, to get those volume, to do all the rest of that. And that gives you a lion's share of an expensive asset that pushes it up. Oh yeah, Bitcoin. But it's not. It's the understanding of the mechanics of Bitcoin that allows you to put the power into proof of power. Remember, what's the difference between a steam engine and a nuclear power plant? Nothing. It's just how much power it takes to turn it off. That's really the difference.
Yeah, and you and Moondog are both parallel in thinking. You guys both
Moondog's the man
at the same time. And I want to talk about, because I love the space theme. That's what we're going with our project. It's all space theme, and you guys got the space thing going on. And I think that's going back to what you were saying earlier. We're so far ahead of everyone. We feel like pioneers out on the rings of Saturn, while everyone else is just like, they're still like, hey, it feels like everyone is still dealing with airplanes. And we are out of the solar system. You know what I mean?
Sure. But remember, like, you would have gone back. All right, hold on. Do we have a sound effect? Did that actually come through?
There's the ginger. They're asking for the ginger.
They found the ginger.
Ginger. Come on in. But I'll drop you the Mike Sellers video, Moondog. I saber rattle this one because it has so much good components to it that's seriously digestible, rewatchable. And you know, for me, watching game dev videos is super fun, but I already know the shit. But you teach the best what you need to learn the most, and you always want to keep subjecting yourself to teaching, learning, and doing.
And you said that's Mike Sellers?
Yeah, I'll drop the link in the thing real quick.
Oh, please do. Yeah, everyone's asking for
it. He's got 2 of them that are fucking fantastic, and then there's one on emergence I can drop in, and then it just takes you down the rabbit hole. But here's the dumb shit: is the art of play. The art of play from puppies to primates is how we learn to build, evolve, and sustain our own ecosystem. It's not just chess. It's not just checkers. It's not just the art of war. It's not just Shakespeare. It's technically the art of play. The game theory, mathematical formula, is parenthesis, mechanics, rules, regulations. What does it do? Divided by systemic design. What does the board look like? End parenthesis, time, social consensus. What does everyone understand about your system? Or how are you playing you? How are you playing the system? Or how's the system being played by another? An easy way to look at that. There's really no difference between chess and checkers except the rules on the board. Now, if I change checkers into backgammon, what changed? The board. But at the end of the day, the checker in checkers goes to the front. He hits the wall at the front. He gets a happy little hat, and he can fucking go back when he gets kinged. In blackjack, you go to the end, you hit the fucking wall, you turn a hard right, Monopoly or anything else. The board dictates the way that you can use the mechanics in your favor or against it. And then understanding those two in parallel is how you can apply social consensus, which is how does everyone understand that? You can take that model and stack it like a pancake, which is technically systemic design, or what I like to call accordion game theory, because you're actually stacking all of these emblems into a breathable entity that reacts in stupid fucking unique ways that you didn't even anticipate. A lot of the stuff at Prey, you had no fucking idea what the damn thing was going to do. We just built the damn thing, and then we just turned it on and let it go. But here is the first Mike Sellers.
That the systematic approach to systemic design.
Yep.
By Sweden Game Arena, so like 10,000 views.
Yeah, but I mean, technically, he's at GDC. Just the channel is Sweden Game Arena.
Okay.
But yeah, he's at GDC, Game Design Summit. It was actually last week in San Francisco. But yeah, again, if you go back to the art of play, building Hexray has heard me talk about this ad nauseum, but building fake reality is really fucking complex. Nobody gets to accidentally leave a Starbucks cup on the set of Game of Thrones. In fake reality, someone had to light it, model it, rig it, put simulations on. Does it have liquid in it? Does it spill? What does it do? Who's your daddy and what does it do? In real reality, people are lazy. And because people are inherently lazy, they want the easy way out. They want to click a magic button and suddenly be a millionaire 2 minutes later and cash out to be like, I'm a genius. No, you're not. Hold on, I've got something for the.
God damn it, Leroy.
There you go. But you don't get to press the Leroy Jenkins button and suddenly get to walk away. If you understand why these systems work, then war and art are actually the same thing. It's courting understanding what your opponent, your lover are. And all of that still works within the same loop. So to go back to foxes and hares, it's what is predators and what are prey, what becomes food for predators and what evens out that ecosystem. And invasive species is where you can possibly get corruption because there's no loops to mitigate that particular vector.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was so inspired earlier by you guys talking about the sealing the water leaks in the boat. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And when you take that into a lot of the things that you've talked about, it kind of circles all around to the same thing as like efficiency, right? Efficiency and energy and, well, community, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Bang, bang. Sounds
bang,
good, man.
Bang, bang. Yeah, we've been cooking for a minute. I think I know you got a hard stop, Hexray. We all got families in life, and I'm sure Kool-Aid,
I'm going back to work.
You're going back to work. I'm going back to
by the way, Third Body Problem on Netflix. Fantastic. You like sci-fi. You like Dune type crazy stuff. Third Body Problem on Netflix. It's the prequel to what became the Dark Forest, which is why we don't see alien life out there. It's fascinating. It's really good book series. No monies and plugs on my thing, but I will definitely give you a story.
Love it.
Well, hey guys, thanks for coming out and joining us today. Thank you everyone in chat. See you guys being active, and that's good stuff. And yeah, man, let you guys do your thing. I'm gonna do my thing, and everyone in chat, have a great week.
Take care, all.
There you go. Hey guys, thanks for coming out, watching Text and Tailgate. Got some guys, it's like drinking from a fire hydrant sometimes, but we have a lot to look forward in this community. Get out and touch grass, you guys. If Twitter and X is bothering you too much, shut down the laptop, walk away. But we got good things in store for us. So, hey, you guys have a great week. Look forward to seeing you guys later.